Hello and welcome to Access Astrology. We are three astrologers who have been fascinated by how astrology unfolds in the evening news, in our daily life, and in our metaphysical search. I am Heather Rowan Robbins. I'm speaking to you tonight from Ronan, Montana, and I hope to be joined by Ann Ortley, who is either in New York or in Florida, her two homes, and Mark Woltz is off at a meeting for the affordable housing in New York. Good work, Mark. We support you for that. So let's talk about what's going on today. One of the astrology of the moment is pretty wild, as you may have noticed, and I'm going to talk about yesterday's chart also for the shooting in New York City. But tonight when we look at a chart where, remember, this is where the horizon was. This is where the sun would be at sunrise, noon, sunset, in the middle of the night. So here we are with the sun getting close to the western horizon if you're in New York City. And it is with the sun and Mercury in Leo, with Mercury retrograde. And last week, the Sun opposed Pluto about 5 days ago. We've been feeling this echo all week. Mercury is retrograding back, coming to close to oppose that Pluto, and then going forward. Now, Mercury exactly opposed Pluto about a month ago in the very end, June 29th. So since that last week of June through this week, we've seen an inordinate amount of Plutonian experiences. Now, we've also seen nice basic Mercury retrograde slapstick. I don't know how many times I go to close something and what I was handling is just flies off the wheel, or the small little snafus, which are daily Mercury retrograde slapstick, which can keep our sense of humor up, as well as some of the more serious events. Last week, a minor version, I'm in the middle of a client and our electricity goes out. My power company says that a frog got fried in the uh, resistor and put out the power for our area for a few hours. Those are classic Mercury retrograde pieces. On the other side of that, I'm hearing story after story of people finally getting problems solved that they've been working on for a long time, finding that missing piece, finding grandmom's ring that had rolled under the dresser. The return of pieces from the past can be a great experience for this Mercury retrograde, but it really wants us to slow down. So if we don't slow down, that's when the slapstick really starts to increase. Now, Mercury retrograde, uh, this Mercury retrograde being going back and forth in that opposition to Pluto, with the sun opposed Pluto, we've also seen a lot of people leave this planet. We've got not a lot of deaths that are unusual, like are the man from the Cosby Show, wonderful man who was the son on the Cosby Show, who drowned just going out for a spring, early morning swim in Costa Rica, to uh, uh, um, a series of wonderful, famous people that have died this week. And I'm blocking on the name of the great singer that did the Vatican Rag and a series of very funny parodies back not that long ago, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But he died at 97, so he had certainly had a right to do that. But why are they leaving now? We had a Hulk Hogan that I don't really miss, but it's one more piece that brings Chuck Mangione, people that bring to our minds those that time is passing and that loss is going on. We've also seen some shootings and accidents, the stalling out of weather systems, and Saturn and Neptune conjunct tend to make swirling wind storms and increase the stalling weather patterns, as we're seeing uh, we saw in Texas, and we saw it swept through the Midwest last night, a big windstorm that came through. And it's a beautiful sunny day here, but we have a flash flood warning for tonight, where there's supposedly a big rainstorm is going to sweep through. dump a lot of water, as we're seeing in this climate change, that weather is not soft, it is uneven and intense, as just as predicted. But here right now, we look at Mars is in Virgo right now, conjunct the South Node. So some old issues of frustration and anger from the past are up to be dealt with. The Venus is in the last degree of Gemini starting tomorrow. On Thursday, it goes into Cancer. We have Venus and Mars sending calm weather. That's good. Thank you, Edith. The, that Venus goes into Cancer as Mars enters Libra, and they're going to stay at that right angle that they've been maintaining for a while, causing a little tension with each other. But that tension is going to shift. We're going to move that from two very nervy signs ruled by Mercury while Mercury is retrograde, and they're going to shift into cardinal signs, both air and water. When it goes into Cancer, Venus goes into Cancer where it loves to be, great for those summer picnics, and Mars into Libra, a little softer, more thoughtful, more socially conscious and focused. Now it's interesting when they both go in that they've been square. It's been, you see that relationships not so much a problem, but they're less a little out of sync with both Venus and Mars in Mercury ruled signs and Mercury retrograde. I'm hearing communication glitches in relationships, timing and rhythm issues. If you don't have to work it out, don't do it now. Work together, work side by side, but don't necessarily try to talk out. Remember, reminisce about wonderful times that you spent together in the past, but don't try to work out the details in the moment or in the future if you don't really need to, because even though our minds may niggle at that, it may not be the best time to do that. When Venus and Mars both get out of those Mercury ruled signs, expect to see that um, some drop in that mercurial tension, except that we know that all this year we have major outer planets in those early degree signs. Pluto is at 2 Aquarius, Saturn at 1 Aries, Neptune at 2 Aries. Now they're all retrograding back. Pluto stays in Aquarius, but these two will retrograde back into Pisces this fall. But here they are. Uh, Uranus is at 0 Gemini, and Jupiter has moved on, is up to 11 Cancer and moving forward. But we have all these outer planets in those early degrees. So every time the moon changes sign, every time, and Venus, as Venus changes signs this weekend, Venus will move into a square to that Saturn and Neptune, quincunx to the Pluto, and a semi-sextile to Uranus. Every time a planet changes signs, they're going to ring that auto harp chord. They're going to ring the bells of those outer planets. And the outer planets don't give us simple messages. It's not just one direction. Saturn and Neptune are asking us to kind of both get started in something new, but look at what's going on, feel discontent, and make creative use out of that. Walk your talk, like live your philosophy, is one of the Saturn Neptune most strong comments. But this is talking about how do you move forward with this and how do you create changes in your life with this, just as Mercury is telling you to sit still. But then Pluto in Aquarius is going to give you very different, like, how do you do this? How does this change your relationship to the people around you, to the community, to the group? All of that, Pluto in Aquarius is going to set off. Uranus in Gemini is speaking about what can we change here? How can we put the motor in? How can we shift gears? What options can we explore? Let's feel this restlessness. So these big existential pieces, and we can go into the deeper levels of what they mean. How do you take your personal authority? Where do you feel? Where do you listen to spirit in this, with Neptune involved? How do you look at your escapism? I'm hearing people with that Saturn Neptune conjunction, there's a real spiritual pain if you don't have spiritual discipline to work with. It can give that existential, that Weltschmerz, that world weariness that says we need more than just this world. We need to feel it on all levels, but not this world. But anyway, so we have those different information, different instructions from each planet. Every time the moon changes signs, which is every 2.5 days, those get struck like a chord. Venus this weekend enters Cancer and hits those planets off. Mars goes into Libra and next Wednesday and will directly oppose that Saturn Neptune. We'll talk more about that early next week, and trines at Mars. So we have these patterns that are circulating, and that I think if we look at what's happening every time we step into those, we feel that resonate when the planets change sign, when the moon change signs, we hear what our instructions are for the next level of work. So this week we've got a lot of planets saying, hurry up and do something, but Mercury says, don't do it quickly. Take your time, move slowly, think it through, be with it, and most of all, be sane, which with that somewhat depression or that kind of existential weariness of the Saturn Neptune conjunction on one side, and the rest of the planets saying, what do you want to do about this world? Look at what's going on. Mercury says, do not do it quickly. Stay in, move slowly and with grace, or accidents pile up. But if it does, we can keep moving towards what's important to us, handle what we need to handle, especially handling work that's unfinished or complications that are straightened out, deal with old issues that really need our help right now. Yesterday, a gunman moved in from New York because, again, we've been seeing a lot of deaths with these planets in relationship to Pluto. And I've noticed that when the Sun and Mercury or Venus start talking to Pluto, square, opposition, conjunction, it's not happens a couple times a year, but that we often see an acceleration of people leaving this earthly realm, and however they want to call it. So yesterday, that gunman walked into New York City, and it was, along with the slapsticks, we often get a Mercury retrograde disaster that hurts. And luckily, most of us have the slapstick or the little misunderstandings that we can correct, or things like the couple that was kissing on the jumbotron and destroyed their marriages at by being publicized on the. That was very Mercury retrograde experience. They weren't expecting it, and Mercury retrograde tends to bring secrets out into the open, uh, and we just can watch that. We kind of our own coyotes, our own mistakes. We can almost, put our hands right on what the problem is and expose ourselves. So it's an interesting process. But we often have like a plane. I remember one Mercury retrograde, a plane's flying over Africa, and the door was unlatched, and many people fell out the back of the plane. Or a person comes to in New York City, they somebody comes to their door and says, "You have just won a gold Mercedes. Here's the keys. There's the car. Isn't it beautiful?" They go away, and the people are stunned, shocked when they find out that actually it's the people next door who won it. They didn't win it. The radio station comes back to try to get the car back, and they pull out guns and say, "Oh no, you don't. You may have given it to the wrong person, but you gave it to us, and we have it." So, we can do levers this. Yesterday, a man who had been was living in Nevada, who felt he had uh, permanent brain damage from um, uh, football, and so we have the neurological systems, which are very mercurial. He felt it was damaged. He had a note that he left in his pocket that's why that the permanent brain damage from football was. He wanted to have his brain. He expected to die in this and he wanted his brain to be investigated. So they're going to, but he then drove across country with an assault weapon that you cannot get in New York City, but he could get it in Nevada where he was. Drove to New York City, parked at 6:30, so by 6:40 he was in the building and going upstairs looking for the NFL office, the National Football League's office. He took the wrong elevator because in New York City, not every elevator goes to every floor, and then got off on the wrong floor and just started shooting people. And it in and then killed some people in the entryway, killed people upstairs. So it was right around this time. We know there was a Capricorn rising. We know that the moon had just conjunct Mars and the south node over the last few hours. So he was moving towards that process. You can see that that moon Mars conjunction every year, every month is a short-term trigger, and he took that short-term trigger and set him off that day. But when did he start out? Apparently, he left home late last week when, say, 4 days ago, when the sun was opposed Pluto. And that obsessive quality of Pluto that kicked into gear, I suspect he'd been brooding on it for the last month since Mercury opposed Pluto in the end of June. And we got several comments about this, how tragic it was, and I wish we didn't have guns. And I so wish, the assault rate when Bill Clinton cut out assault rifles, banned assault rifles, the mass murders went down 43%. And then George Bush let that expire. People could buy assault rifles again, and it went up several 100%, the amount of public deaths. So yes, I completely agree on that. But we have, I think it's going to take a while, and the moon is moving into, as it did this morning, to a grand trine with Pluto and Uranus, really asking us to think about what happened and what can be fixed here. And I'm just very sorry that happened. So I'm going to come back now to look at the clients. I gather Anne isn't going to make it tonight. And we'll start talking about some of the clients that I take about 3 cases a day. If you want to send in your chart, we've still got a few weeks backlog here, but we're always happy to put you on the list. Come in with a clear question so that we can focus our comments for you, and send it to you can send it to startcodes.heartcodes@gmail.com. On the YouTube channel, it says starcodes dash, but it's startcodes dot if you want to get it to me, or hrowanrobbins@gmail.com, either one. This question here, and I want to get what Ture had to say. And she said, I'm working on increasing income and the possibility of moving, feeling like I've grown out of the place I'm in. I've been here 8 years, experiencing unpleasant visitors, creepy crawlies, and a mouse. It's extremely noisy, and garbage trucks from dumpsters at 3 a.m. And Uranus is moving into the 4th. Is this a disruption that is a sign, a time to move this year? And I would say absolutely yes. So we have someone with the moon in Leo who is feeling Pluto. Mercury is retrograding back to her moon as we talk about her now, which is a wonderful time for us to paying attention to this process. Mars in in Pisces can make it hard for her to sort of feel like, do I have a right to do this? I'm feeling willful, but do I? Mars and Pisces can sometimes feel like if I just adapt a little bit more, then I'll be okay. And I would really ask her to say, not can she live here, but is this the right place for her to be living? rather than can she live here? The answer is yes, she can adapt to a hell of a lot. Is it the right and healthy that she adapt a hell of a lot? That is the question. So she has a Sun and South node here in Gemini, again, that mutability, and Sun in Taurus. When we look at her trifeel here, remember that this, I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Nope, doesn't. So in this, the moon, her progressed moon is going through her fourth house. Her progressed moon's in Gemini. I think she really wanted to move about 6 to 7 months ago when her progressed moon conjunct Uranus. But Uranus, which takes 84 years around the zodiac, is leaving her house of it's been in the house of neighborhood, spends about 8 years in a sign, 7, 8 years, and she has been in this noisy neighborhood for 8 years, and it sounds like it's getting noisier and noisier as Uranus went through that and is coming up to the bottom of her chart. Now, for the next few months, it's going to be conjunct her IC. That's the taproot. Remember, if you could stand here when you're born, drop a line through you and throw out the other side, you have that IC, that lowest point. Uranus right on that point suggests that you move. Almost always when Uranus hits that point and goes into your fourth house, either you move or you renovate your home or you move to another part of the world, or it is or the dynamics of your home really changes. In other words, change and home are one. There's many different ways you can live that out. If you stay here, it's time for major renovations. But if you want to move, Uranus will be there for another 7 or 8 years, but you'll really feel it now. And then again next spring as Uranus goes back and forth over that IC point. And uh, the what I ask with Uranus is, to really start looking ahead of time and don't wait until you have to move. Uh, I had Uranus talking to my fourth house cusp once, and I was saying, "Oh, I don't want to move. I've got such good rent here." And the stairs fell in. The apartment was sold, and they doubled the rent. Everything that it kicked me out. If you don't work with Uranus, then it gets more and more urgent and you have less and less choice. You just have to respond to, here, quick catch. So when Uranus is talking to your chart, be proactive. That doesn't mean you leap ahead of it, but you start doing feasibility studies and investigating possibilities and getting the money ready for a down payment and, put your plans in place. Uranus will not, and if it kicks you out, it's not big as a punishment. Usually Uranus says, I've got something better waiting for you, but you won't believe me till you get there and settle in, whether it's a house or a relationship or a new phase in your life. So watch that Uranus going back and forth over that fourth house cusp. Her progressed moon is in the fourth. It's like wanting a real home with people that you can talk to, a neighborhood that you like, that you can step out and find coffee, that's a little less noisy and a little more interesting. Um, so I think that you'll be able to do that. It's so hard for a Taurus to get moving, but to really kind of plan it out and make it happen. So the next question we had was from Natalie, and Natalie asked, uh, she just said she sent her chart in a while ago, but we somehow missed it, and she just wants to know what's happening coming up. So we have a wonderful Capricorn moon in Leo, second moon in Leo. And it's interesting with all these planets in Leo that these people are finally, and they may have put their charts in before, but when Leo asks us to center ourselves, not to be self centered, but to center ourselves, to come to know ourselves, to listen to what we need. Right before we go into the school year, I hear that some schools are starting with the sun in Leo, and that is so wrong. I want it to be with the sun We with the sun when the sun goes into Virgo, people are ready for school. The sun's in Leo. We are renewing. We are refilling our wells. We're going to, music festivals and art things and indulging ourselves and really refilling the wells and listening to what we need for quality of life. That gives us the energy to really hear ourselves so we can negotiate ourselves. Then we can hear everybody else and get busy and serve the world without losing that the self-care that we need to maintain it. We're always thinking of what brings a sustainable ecosystem out of our life. Giving without receiving, it will destroy a field. It destroys a person. We have a lot of work coming up to adjust and change and deal with a world that's adjusting and changing over this next year. So taking a deep breath to really hear ourselves, hear what we need, hear what we want, hear what refills our wells is so important during this Leo season. And we have and it's interesting that these 2 Moon and Leos ask for, get some time and attention while there's several Leo planets. So she is Natalie is a Moon in Leo with a Cancer rising, and Venus and Mercury very kind of organi and Venus and the Sun in Capricorn, Mercury in Sagittarius, a kind of a broad mind, looking elsewhere, imagining what's going on with the world, and some interesting mix of being out there in the world and in here in 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 an inner world. When we look at her tri-wheel, with again the natal wheel on the inside, what we were just looking at, the next ring out are progressions, and the third ring out are where the planets are today. And she has some changes coming up in the months ahead. Now we know that towards the end of the pandemic, Pluto entered her seventh house and opposed her sun. There was probably some real changing of the guard of the people in her life, but she is kind of stepping into a new phase over the last couple of years. Her moon is in Aquarius, progressed moon in Aquarius, about 10 months in, so another 20 months. We're asking her to connect to the community, get to know new people, bring in new people. A lot of people left her life, I suspect, when Pluto hit her seventh house cusp. A lot of people, moved away, had a break in the relationship or left the earth, and she needs it's new people. It's kind of finding new ways in and of working with people in those group experiences with Mars in Venus ruled Taurus on the cusp of her 11th, that she grows community through connection, through service, and through some really beautiful things. So we have Mercury coming up, and at Mercury, her progressed Mercury is at 1 Aries. So this Saturn Neptune has been sitting right on her progressed Mercury, will retrograde back and come forward, learning new possibility of learning new things, of opening her mind up and connections to different spiritual routines, rituals, disciplines, and with people that whose integrity that she trusts, and moving her whole work and way of living in line with her spiritual practice. And it may not, she may not, when Neptune touches something, you don't know. It's like a big unknown. So there's a change from what she's been doing to where she's going. But it looks like it can be a real adventure for her to get to know people and to reach out, which is very exciting. The we're going to go a little bit over time to get in Kim and her child, or Kim's child. Kim asked us about a child who has a fairly strong nervous constitution, and her anxiety levels have made it a little hard for her to go reach out to the world. And it looks like it's partly on father's side, partly on mother's side, the habits. This is a child who really wants to go out into the world. She's got sun and moon in a dark of the moon, but sun and moon in Sagittarius with a Saturn in Capricorn in Saturn in Leo on a Leo rising, forming a grand trine with her North Node in Aries. She's going to do fine in the long run. And higher education will really, she's got the ruler of higher education, that Mars in Taurus right here. When she finds something that like she wants to, cause she wants to believe in, she can make great progress. Now, this year is a year of amazing changes for her as that Saturn Neptune comes to trine her Venus and Mars. Um, Last year she was getting ready to go to college and decided to back off. Her progressed moon was in her 12th house. That wasn't time for her to go be out there and be sociable. But her progressed moon is in Leo in the first house. It's about to go into Virgo. I think she's getting ready to kind of really sink her teeth into some good work. Um, and she mentioned counseling, and I don't think counseling is the issue. I think this is neurological, not some great neuroses. That with Saturn in the 12th house, there may have been a little bit difficulty at the birth itself. So when she enters new situations, she can feel stunted or delayed for a while, and take a while to enter the new situation. But with Saturn in that 12th house. Um, I think that it can feel a little overwhelmed that about the world, but once she gets in there and starts working, it's easy for her. But I would ask her if she's had a good neurological workup, and I would say that there might be some minor learning peculiarities, or maybe something like ADHD, like a nervous system that kind of runs high rev, um, that if she learns how to navigate, her whole life gets a lot easier with all of that. And this Saturn Neptune conjunction forming a trine to her sun and moon in Sagittarius is a really good time to figure this out, to give her the skills that she needs, because this feels not heavy psychological, but more how do I work with my own unique nervous system. Now, when we look at Kim and her mother around the outside, so Kim's child is here, mom's planet's on the outside. Now, mom has Sun and Mars in Leo, and Mercury is sitting right on it, retrograde. I can share this stirs things up, but it can see like there's both very protective, that mom wants to protect this child, but it's so important that Kim live her life out through herself and give her child some room, that her very protectiveness, like they're very psychically bonded, but that their very protectiveness that doesn't quite give her child the room. I think getting a good neuro workup and saying I believe in you to her daughter, giving her some more room, being a strong safety net, but really letting the kid take her, her own experiments in the world is going to be important. Otherwise, she will tend to defer to her mother as a stronger person rather than find her own strength that might feel a little wobbly at first, like a bird learning to fly. So I would say to Kim, get busy yourself. Go do what you want. Model for your daughter engaging in something new in the world, and that will give you time to take a deep breath and give her the psychic room to find herself here. I think she's going to be okay. I think this school year can be a real success. And I think if she understands her neurological system, what works for her, how she's set up, then she will be able to run with it and work with it in a good way. So good luck with that. I'm going to come back to us. Next week, we hope to have both Mark and Ann back here, and we miss them, but we love doing this work for you. We will have 3 more charts next week. We will have 3 more examples of how we can apply astrology to your charts. We do this not just for reading, but so everybody can learn from the examples that we're bringing up. And so that's why we make it a little less personal and a little bit more of a teaching experience. Remember to email me at starcodes.heartcodes@gmail or hrowanrobbins@gmail, and I will respond to you, though it may take me a few days. Enjoy and have a good week.